All right, here we go. How you doing, folks? Another edition of the Mr. Josh Podcast. I am trying to get a little more into the interview format, which is what I wanted to do along the way. And I think about my first 10 episodes were more of an introductory to me and what I was about and the perspective where a lot of this would come from. My first interview subject is a gentleman that I am actually met on Instagram through, it's really kind of interesting. His name is Frederick Gonzales, right?
Yes.
And it is Frediculousness. As you could see, he took the Fred and ridiculousness and mashed them up. And so on Instagram, if you're looking for his account, it is Frediculousness. I'm going to let him explain who he is, what he does. Before I do that, the whole point and why he's here and how we struck up quickly, sharing and some ideas was basically through some Instagram posts regarding QAnon, tagged QAnon or tag, where we go, where we go, one we go all. If anybody's familiar with that hashtag and they have no idea what it means, the WWG1, WGA has a significance. It's not just a bunch of garbled letters. I'm going to let Frederick introduce himself. It was that simple, folks. You can make friends and meet people and share ideas, and then Instagram gives you the opportunity to phone chat or video chat, and we spoke, and I was fascinated with what he had to say, and I think he was fascinated with some things I had to say, so I'm going to give him the floor to introduce himself, and we're going to talk for an hour about some ideas, and hopefully it enlightens you. Maybe it'll piss you off. Maybe it'll make you happy. We definitely want feedback if we can get it. And so I'm going to give him the floor right now to introduce himself. Sometimes people call him Freddie. Sometimes people call him Eric. You know him as Frediculousness. Go for it.
Hey, everybody. My name is Frederick Gonzales, and I am a storytelling architect as my side business. And I also have a 9-to-5 regular work job. And Josh and I, we met a couple of days ago simply by me kind of commenting on a post and him just simply replying. For me personally, I kind of came onto the whole like QAnon scene kind of recently. However, there were actually several other Instagram accounts that I was following for a good couple of months that actually kind of led me here. There's this account called Super Dope Posts where generally Monday through Friday they put a lot of stuff that kind of shows this is what the truth is, or this is how media is kind of reporting things inconsistently, and those are kind of weird because that was like my intermediate or my beginning form of being red pilled, I would say. And then on the weekends they kind of put like really cool content where you see like people on dirt bikes doing 360s in the air and so on and so forth. So they have a lot of good mixture in their content. And then I came across this other Instagram account called Ask the Q, and then a couple of weeks after following that, especially into the quarantine and shelter in place, I kind of came across the hashtag where I was like, oh, let me just go start following things. And this is how Josh and I met.
And I got to tell you, there's a lot of information on there. I mean, it doesn't matter what your niche is. If you like something, it doesn't have to be politics or political. Instagram, Pinterest, certain sites, there's just such a treasure trove of memes, information, video reposts. There's just so much. So if you're into Q, if you're into getting some information you're not going to get from the mainstream news, mainstream media, if you're interested in knowing what's really going on, this is one way to do it. Don't believe the shit that you've seen where the mainstream media decided to finally latch onto Q. I don't know if Eric knows this, but the media during one of the Trump rallies when he was running started seeing people wearing Q shirts. They didn't know what it was. And they obviously did their little due diligence the few times that they do. And they discovered it was this subculture of Trump fans that, really take it to another level and are much more informed. So they went right after discrediting them. Media Matters, if you're familiar with Media Matters, a piece of shit organization that literally spends its entire time and money going through anything that doesn't have a completely left point of view and trying to debunk it. They go after Fox. They go after Alex Jones. They go after everybody that doesn't toe the party line. And Q is another one in their crosshairs. So it's another one of those conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat, debunk shit. I don't know if you know this as well. The CIA actually created the term conspiracy theory, and it was done as a pejorative to make anybody who thought, whether it was out of the norm or question what was going on with government, whatever, to discredit you and make you look like a fool. And so the QAnon thread and people that follow that have definitely been kind of branded as that. Explain to the folks, I've explained this in previous posts and podcasts that I've done, how I got here. Tell everyone, how old are you, if you don't mind sharing?
I'm 35 years old.
So he's 35 years old. I'm 45. I have a decade on Eric here. Explain, how did you get red pilled? Was it somebody in your family? Was it the social media? Where did you make the change? Because you started to explain to me, you're a very quintessential example of the walk away movement. If people remember the hashtag walk away, which was Democrats who were like, holy shit, this party's lost its way. It doesn't represent me at all. It's full of misinformation and maybe even lies, dare I say. And how did you arrive to the point that you're following Q? And what has it meant for whether friends, family? How have you been regarded in terms of, openly explaining, are you a Trump fan? Who are you supporting? Tell us a little about, the 2020 election. Who are you supporting and how did you get there?
That's a really loaded question. No, but I got plenty of time though. No. Yeah. So for me, I guess like the journey kind of started for me, I would say about like 5 years ago or so, right? And I'm not saying like I came on the scene 5 years ago, but it was more of around that time when I turned 30. That was when I started to kind of invest into ideas about investing into myself. So I started listening to podcasts, I started reading books, started to go to like growth seminars, business conferences, and things of that nature. And back then, I decided to start my own side business, right? And my first side business was doing meal prep. And then I didn't really like that. Then I moved on to doing social media marketing. And then I realized that I didn't like that either, but I only did that because of the extension of storytelling. And then that's when it dawned on me, like, like I should do storytelling, right? And so kind of spending all this time with developing myself. And then I also came across a lot of, actually, no. I know the moment I can tell about this. I watched this documentary called The Rise of Jordan Peterson. It was on Netflix or Hulu, something like that. And he talks about how the main difference between the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party is that the Liberal Party, they feel that the best way for them to solve problems is for them to go straight to the top. So, and you go straight to the top with you not knowing anything about what the fuck you're trying to solve. That's why you have people like Greta Thunberg, who's trying to solve going green at like 16 years old, which makes absolutely no sense.
So you saw that she's a clown and a pawn by her own parents. Absolute joke. Came across a meme, side note, not to interrupt you, remember where you are. Basically like holding a sign saying, don't forget me, remember me. Where the fuck is she?
Yeah.
So while we're dealing with coronavirus, all of a sudden the soup du jour of the green movement and climate change, sure shit don't matter. You don't hear anybody fucking crying about that as much anymore,
well,
do you?
Not only that, if there's nobody on the streets polluting the air, right, then like by definition, things are starting to get green again.
Well, which is funny. And here's another tidbit you may not know. So go ahead and tell this to everybody. And folks, you may not know this. And it was pointed out to me. It was brilliant. I never thought of it. So while Greta Thunberg and AOC and all these people were rebelling against meat, because they were saying that the cows were farting and that the methane gas, right, was a huge contributor to our global warming, climate change the term whenever you feel it suits you, problem. And guess what they've discovered? Like you said, as a result, especially with China, as a result of all of these folks being quarantined, the air is much cleaner. Everything around the world, they've done the studies, is definitely cleaner, which makes sense. All industry is stopped. All the cars are, everything, all the polluting has slowed down. You know what hasn't slowed down? Cows. You know what didn't disappear? Farting. Farting cows never changed. And yet a tremendous drop in the carbon emissions and all this other shit, or however they quantify this, you know what I mean? So isn't it kind of funny that they use that as a real big blaming point, yet when you're talking about equations and mathematics and you're putting in your variables, that variable never changed.
Yeah, it's like people are really good with taking statistics and then turning them into like moot points or like partial like lies, I would say. Like learning how to lie with statistics.
Absolutely. Partial truths. You know, one thing that you were taught as a kid, lying is not just about out and out misinformation, like when you broke the vase and say you didn't do it. There's also lying through omission. And that is what the media is actually most guilty of. And probably most people, when they lie to you, it's lying through omission. It's just not telling you, but it's not telling you incorrect information. It's just not telling you at all.
Oh, so let me touch on statistics right after I finished the conservative about how to the best way to solve problems. So in Jordan Peterson's way, he talks about the conservative way about going about solving problems is through strengthening of yourself. And then that's just when I was like, oh, like I've been doing this like for like the past 5 years, and I didn't really know that that's been like what I was doing. And then I was like, oh, so that kind of gave me like a real aha moment. And this was like literally within the last, I would say like last 6 weeks or so when I was like, oh, like this is like what it is. And everything just started to make a lot of sense.
So that's how recent this occurred, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, like so since we started the whole quarantine in place, I literally came across the documentary, The Rise of Jordan Peterson. Because I knew who he was initially, because he kind of talked about like not addressing people by pronouns, and I don't even get me started on that. Like I actually had to ask like one of my friends who's gay to kind of explain this to me, but he was like, yeah, no, I got no words for that, because he's just like, you're just so funny. Because for me, I think like I should call a person either by their name, because you know you make checks out to names, or I call you what the doctor calls you, and that's just really it. Like anyways though. Anyways though, so going back to like statistics and equations though, right? One of the things why statistics is fucked up is because in a statistical distribution, they always talk about when you have outliers, you throw them out. And to be successful in life, you actually have to study the outliers, not the mean or not the average. And then so now it's, I think more about, oh, like this is just where, you know, this is how you study greatness. And so things can be funky when it comes to like statistics and things like that, hence context.
Absolutely. I mean, numbers can be fudged and things can be, you know, misconstrued. Like sometimes if somebody said, there's 1,000 of these, but it was out of 1,000,000. Well, it doesn't sound so big, does it? But if somebody said, you know, there's 1,000 of these and it's out of 1,000, well, now it's 100%. So even that number can be, you know, manipulated in terms of what it represents.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like the death rate for fucking coronavirus. It's like more people died from the flu. Or more people die from the flu than this shit.
Boy, I want to hold off on coronavirus because I'd like to go there with you because it's so topical, and kick around what you think of it and whether they're conspiracy theories or whatnot. I would be interested on some of your opinions. What Frederick hasn't explained is that, and you'll sometimes I'll call him Eric. He goes by a couple of different nicknames, so forgive me. But tell everybody, obviously, you're Asian American. What is your background?
Yeah, I'm Filipino.
Full Filipino, 100%.
Yes. Okay,
and your parents were born in the Philippines or the United States?
No, they were born in the Philippines.
Okay, so you're one generation removed American. So it's pretty new, pretty fresh.
Yeah.
Which is also interesting. I'd like to hear your perspective and for you to talk to people. And then I want to get back to Jordan Peterson because I'd like to hear some more about what you think of him and maybe some other people that you're influenced by, because he's a great start. If that's how you got red pilled, you really started almost at the apex of the intelligence quotient of the intellectual dark web. You'll hear that term, intellectual dark web. I can recommend 100 people to you. But he is, as far as intelligence goes and thought and logic, this guy, it's really hard to find somebody better or more intelligent for you to have crossed over with. Do you know what I mean? Like this guy's not a hokey.
Like him and like Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro's another one.
He's a facts guy. I like that. So.
And Ben Shapiro, he's come up very fast. He's come up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's on. I think it's the Daily Wire. I don't want to misquote
Something
that,
like
but
that. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's and then he's been on Fox a bunch of times and whatnot. So yeah, Ben Shapiro's made waves, and both of them steeped in logic. Both of them very highly analytical, and just common sense. You know, you'd be surprised. The problem I think with the left and with anybody that maybe is not looking at things really crystal clear, but the left seems to be doing this more. There's just common sense is thrown out the window. Once you do identity politics, once you are ruled with your heart, which is I'm black, I'm a woman, I'm gay, I'm Muslim. Once you start doing that, logic is thrown out the window. It's just now you're just going with your identifier. And I don't think that is the best way to go about things. It's a great way if you're a complainer. It's a great way if you're looking for sympathy. It's a great way if you're looking for they call it intersectionality. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term, but intersectionality, which Ben Shapiro has talked about often, and Mike Cernovich and other speakers, is it's the Muslim woman crisscrossing with each other and sharing in their kind of their woe is me. You know what I mean? So it's every group interwoven, and you'll hear Ben Shapiro, you should look this up. He even talks about the oppression Olympics. A lot of people never bring it up. They don't know what that is. There's a totem pole for who is the most, who has it the worst. Who has it the worst? Who can cry more legitimately and have somebody say, yeah, man, you've got it the worst? Is it Native Americans?
No, it's people
Muslims?
that are like dying from starvation.
Right. Maybe the handicapped. I always joke with people, you know, nobody ever asked their opinion, the fucking handicapped.
Yeah.
They don't cry about nothing. They just wanted some ramps. They just wanted some ramps. And that's a group of people that are completely disenfranchised and no one gives a shit about. And I think it's really funny that every other disenfranchised group, they get to play with each other real nice. That's why the big conundrum in intersectionality is gay Muslims. So whereas in the world, they're still throwing gay people off of cliffs in the Middle East, where do you side when it's a gay Muslim issue? Like, ooh, wow, damn, which one? I'm gonna rock in a hard place here. So tell us, going back to you mentioned that you are Filipino-American. Tell people about what you support, how it's been with your family, and just talk about how this has affected you in your own person, whatever you choose to share. Talk about your identity and how what you believe has maybe affected that, or you know, how you deal with that.
So let me think about this. So when it comes to like things that I support too, right? Let me expand on this a little bit more. My best friend, his name is Chris, and I play cards with him like a lot, just like me and him. And I attribute like my ability to be able to grow and like read people a lot because to him basically. And I always kind of calls like, yeah, no, like I'm a monster. You made me like this. Thanks, bro. And like he's a Trump supporter, right? And at first it was at first I was like, oh, like really, you're like that? You know, like this is like a while back. And then what I learned from him was that we can learn to like, we can agree to disagree with each other. And kind of just being around that, I was just like, oh, wow, like that's kind of like an amazing thing. And then kind of going back to the rise of Jordan Peterson, the documentary I was watching, what I literally was seeing was all of these people trying to protest against this one person. And by all means, you have the right to protest. But when you get to a point where you want to become really angry, fanatical, then what are you really protesting? Because now your message isn't able to get across. And so one of the things that I started to realize was that, at least like what I was seeing, was that people, they either A, they don't like it when you disagree with them, and then B, they try to make you, or they try to villainize you by literally calling you like a racist or xenophobe or anything like that, so that they can try to silence you because now they want to feel more dominant than you. And it's just really a sad thing, like for me personally, because I love having intellectual conversations and their debates, and I always loved every opportunity for me to be able to expand like my worldview, right? So like what I'm not seeing, if somebody can point that out, I'm like, oh, okay, and then that's for me to do my own research, create my own opinions based upon that. So for me, I kind of learned a lot about just learn to understand each other from my friend and from this documentary that I recently just watched. And then now, when it comes to like my politics and stuff like that, I don't really tell people like I'm like a conservative or like I'm a Trump supporter per se, just because those are just like real moot points that they just kind of feel weird. It's more like when you get around people that are really highly intellectual, like it's great because then you can have those conversations. But then if you're around people that are kind of informed by the media, then it makes it really difficult. I remember trying to just tell a person I was talking to this past week, just, random things about like what's going on in the media, what's going on in the United States right now, and what they're not telling you. And I just like vividly remember like kind of getting this tonal shift in the person that was talking to me, and it's like, oh, like they would never say you're kind of weird, but you just get that feeling. So when it comes to that, it's just one of those weird things where I don't really bring it up as much per se. And then even with even with my parents, right? Like my dad's a Democrat. I think my mom's my mom's a Republican, but she won't necessarily say that outwardly.
Right.
So, and then because my dad's like super, super old, it's just like, all right, like let me, I'd rather just not pick this fight with you, right? Because I remember one time, actually in the past couple of weeks, my dad's like, why are you listening to Donald Trump? He's hella dumb, da 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 da. And then I could have just been like, you know what? Just because you don't like him doesn't mean that he's not right. And, because that's a cognitive bias. But I was just like, no, I'm just not gonna like deal with that. Then not only that too, Donald Trump literally is like the second highest IQ of all of our like presidents at like
I never heard that.
138.
That makes that's interesting.
Or
Donald,
or I don't know if it's 138 or like 148. I don't know. It's like up there. I just remember John Quincy Adams is number one, and then he's number two.
Fascinating. Donald Trump is way smarter than people think. If you ask anybody that actually knows him, if you've ever met anybody that's actually been around him, well, the way he talks, though, he is not eloquent. He is not an out and out liar. He is not a polished politician liar. So he's not sitting there and grinning at you while he lies to you, looking for re-election, which is what all of them are about. People don't seem to understand that Donald Trump was the retribution for all the past presidents that we had. People were fucking sick of it. I was one of them. People had enough on both sides of the lies. You hear the term rhino, which stands for Republican in name only. These two parties are blurred together now. Now we're probably, now that Trump is here, it's definitely a little more polarized, or a lot more polarized. And there you have your Trump Republicans, and you still have your rhinos. Mitt Romney is not a Trump Republican. He's a rhino, a piece of shit, and a traitor. But it is interesting to hear your perspective of, whether it's the Asian community. I mean, do you feel that the Asian community, not outside of your parents or family, how do they feel about Trump? Do they tend to lean more Democrat? Because, people that follow this stuff, you could say black folks definitely go Democrat. It's almost 95 to 98%. A lot of the Latin community has a little bit more of a split in it. The Cubans in South Florida tend to lean Republican, but a lot of the country, Latin is tends to lean Democrat. How is it, whether it's the Asian community or the Filipino community? How would you say that the people you're familiar with, where do they tend to stand with this?
So I would kind of just say that in the Asian community, from what I see, based upon what I do at work and where I work at, because I essentially work at Facebook per se, and then I run our Toastmasters club there, and I feel that a majority of Asian people within the tech industry lean more Democrat than Republican,
Right.
and because they are kind of just informed by what like they're kind of informed by the media per se. And then not only that too, actually, I think being in the Asian culture, we're kind of we're conditioned by our parents to think like do as I say, right? Not as I do kind of type thing growing up. So we were never really taught to like question authority or like question into things, right? So like our parents kind of just grew us to be like, oh yeah, like our parents grew us to just be like yes people so that we don't create too much churn, right?
I think that that's
And
why China was able to get away with what they do with their citizens so much, that in maybe the Asian culture you mentioned about questioning authority, that China has been able to really rule with an iron fist over those people, and they're proud of their country. They don't, I don't think they think that they're part of some, you know, evil regime. Does you think that ties in like that over there?
so I can't speak on behalf of China just because I don't know as much per se. I kind of just make that opinion based upon like
Right.
my own upbringing and then the way in which like I kind of observe like other people, right? I mean, unless you are a business owner, unless you like an entrepreneur, right, where you figure out ways to not only better yourself but better the community through the development of yourself, right? Most of the times, it's if you are going through the collegiate system, then you're kind of just being conditioned to be liberal. Yeah.
That's true. And you mentioned that you're in the tech world. So, I mean, I guess Asian aside, if you're in Silicon Valley or doing anything tech, yes, they are also probably 90+% Democrat, as well as all the tech companies. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and YouTube and Google and even,
Yeah.
you know, Apple. Everybody seems to have, they're all in line with a certain ideology, and it's not necessarily pro-Trump or pro-Republican or, you
No,
know,
but
they're, you know, definitely.
yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where it's like you don't think that it's like for some reason people on the left think that it's okay to give aid to another country, but rather than to give aid to your fellow American that may be homeless on the street, like starving, right? Or even like give aid to your fellow Americans that are small business owners that are trying to keep their business afloat, pay their employees, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just weird. So the whole idea of like support is kind of more like I, if you're right, like if you're kind of on the liberal side versus like everyone.
I think that we were talking about that too before we did this interview, and you made a great point. And I think I had said, you know, a great thing that Americans should be actually demanding, and this, again, this is for Trump as well. This is not playing favorites with anybody. I think it'd be very important for us to, I'm a big statistics person. I love statistics. When I collected baseball cards and football cards, I knew the stats of the players. I was playing fantasy football way before other people, and rotisserie baseball, because I love statistics. Here's a statistic that we deserve to know, and it should be made easily aware for all Americans. And I'm sure it can be sought out, but we should know exactly how much aid is given to every country collectively every year in the world, how many billions of dollars, and then broken down by country. I don't need to know why. I mean, there's different global political reasons for why we do this. A big portion of this is we like to buy the rights to have bases all around the world, whether it's for protection, imperialism, whatever you want to say. That's not the important part. I just want to know how much money is allocated for everyone else, like you said, instead of here, while we still have a homeless problem, while we still have children that don't eat problem, while we still have businesses that struggle that could use the help problem, while we still have issues here that can use these funds. How much? I just think we need to know, and then people can make educated decisions what they do with that information, and hold the feet to the fire of those that are making sure these other countries get that money. I'm not saying we got to give zero. I want to know how much it is, and I think you do, and I think everyone deserves to. I always make a joke. If we know the fucking football scores every Sunday, that we are guaranteed to know what the basketball scores are and all this, and pointless information, who won the Academy Awards, and all this other pointless information, we should be able to know that as well, which I think is more relevant to your life and more relevant to, you know, what's going on with your money.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we should demand to actually know that. So, and I'm sure that that's something that can be looked up or whatnot, but it's probably, we should definitely have a better idea of some of those numbers. Um, Explain to what exactly it is that you do. You had mentioned about public speaking, and I guess you're an instructor or somebody that helps people with that. Tell a little bit about, what it is that you do. That was interesting to me.
Yeah. So I kind of coined the term storytelling architect, and that's kind of my side hustle that I'm working on at the moment. And the whole basis of it is that how can I be a ghostwriter for somebody like, so hold on. My end goal is how can I become ghostwriter for a person that delivers any sort of platform speech, right? So whether you're at a business conference, right, they call those platform selling events, right, where you want to be able to put together your little spiel to basically make people that are in the back of rows stand on up and then rush the aisles or the rafters so that they can buy your products or service or whatever you're trying to go sell. Or I wanted to be the ghostwriter for people that make their product announcements. So for example, when like the iPhone 15 comes out in like X amount of so years, how can I be the person that kind of designs like that story flow so that when you present your product on a platform in front of a live audience, everybody's like, oh, right. And then what I really wanted to do though, right, was to be able to just coach people on how to become better speakers. And especially in the tech industry, you have people that are engineers that are really, really introverted, that are forced to go and deliver speeches and presentations in front of like hundreds of their peers. And unless you're like at a director level where you can get all that outsourced and spend tens of thousands of dollars, most of the time, people that are kind of in the middle that are in these kinds of situations, they're not necessarily supported per se. And not only that, when you have to listen to a speech and you're in the audience in your workplace and you just tell yourself, man, this is pretty boring, like that kind of leads to the detriment of like your surroundings, your environment, so on and so forth. And long story short, it's just basically teaching people A, how to be a leader, and B, how to become a better human being and learn how to play the people game.
Right. And how has that been? How long have you been doing that for? And has it been successful for you?
So uh, I've kind of had like slight iterations within that for like the past 2 years or so, right? For me, it started about like almost 2 years ago where I decided, you know what, let me just go start recording a whole bunch of videos and kind of take everything that I know about public speaking, which is a lot of different, or which I take from origins of psychology, storytelling, marketing, sales, persuasion, influence, spirituality, so on and so forth. And I kind of took a trove of all those things and put it together into like a massive program that I recorded. And then after that, once I finished the recording of this at the end of the summer, 2 summers ago, I caught myself in a situation where I'm telling myself, gee, I don't know where to host this. I don't even know what the next steps are, so on and so forth. And then it was until January of last year where I decided to kind of start over again, per se, where I kind of invest into a program where they kind of teach you, well, this is how you do it, right? And through utilization of Facebook groups, going live, doing beta webinars, so on and so forth. And then as I was doing that, I kind of just came across the whole idea too that I wanted to do not only just that, but I wanted to get into like corporate training. And that actually really stuck with me a lot because around last, let me see, around last September of 2019, I was being with my former group that I was there for a good solid 6 years, and I was literally facing like one of those situations at work where I know I was being fucked over, but they were trying to make it really, really eloquent, right? So like, when you see a snake, like when you see a snake that's a person, it's like, oh, I can tell he's a snake, right? Versus like, oh, like you're like a real leader, a real person. So I was kind of just getting snaked out of my job, and it really struck a chord with me because I'm like, you are a shit leader. You don't know anything about just being a leader, about how to get people to go above and beyond for you. And then so for me now, I kind of slightly did a pivot where I'm like, let me go and start to break into doing like coaching for this, and then try to get into like the group training and corporate training aspect. And so I came across this idea basically within the last 3 months or so of like doing the group training and corporate training aspect. And then I was trying to put out content and trying to secure all these things. The shelter in place hit, and I was like, man, it kind of broke my heart a little bit, because I had a Chipotle training workshop, like Chipotle corporate training workshop on the books, and that kind of just got pushed out.
What is that? Explain what you mean by that. What you were able to, they were hiring you to do that for them?
Yeah, so basically one of my really good friends is a director for Chipotle corporate, and then so he asked me some questions about delivering a reorg announcement. And so in the Silicon Valley, if you're not familiar with the term reorg basically stands for reorganization. And in the tech valley, or at least in Silicon Valley, there's a negative connotation with the word reorg. And basically reorg is when you as a company start to restructure your resources so that you can address more problems at the forefront, right? Because those are blocking you, because you have a lot of pain points, you can't get things done, et cetera, without firing anybody, right? This isn't layoffs, this is just like reorg. And so for some reason, when people deliver reorg announcements, you're saying that I'm here to help you. We are here to basically give you resources to address this. And then so now when you're like, there's something massively wrong when you are trying to tell the people the people in your company that you are shuffling out resources to help them out, and there's something negative about that. It's like, I'm here to deliver you a solution, and I don't like the word reorg. So it's more like, it's not basically what you're doing, but it's how you're delivering that message. And I'm just
like, afraid of change?
Is that? Yeah. Sorry, say that one more time.
Is it because people are afraid of change? So there's a fear when it comes to that? Is that what it comes down to?
I guess so. It's either that, or they kind of feel like what they're doing, like they're not making enough impact, so on and so forth, right? But it's just like, I don't know. That's a whole other thing. Anyways, so my friend asked me to kind of put together, or like, what are my thoughts on delivering a reorg announcement. And it's very, very simple. All you have to say is, here's your call to action at the very end. Your call to action in the reorg is saying that all I ask is for your continued trust and faith in our leadership, and we will get through these tumultuous times together, and it will lead you to like, greener pastures. That's your call to action. And then now it's more like, okay, well, here's your low. Your low is basically, you want to leverage, we took statistics, polls of everybody. You're saying that you were feeling blocked by these 3 things right here, and that it was affecting your ability to be able to bring more impact into the workplace, so on and so forth. And then so now you're like, what if I were to tell you that we could make all these things go away? Would you feel that you could get more things done? Would you feel like you can go and be more vibrant, so on and so forth? And then boom, here's your solution, which is, we're going to go and reorganize or reshuffle around corporate resources so that we can help address this low, so that you don't have to feel low anymore. And then your call to action, right? So low, high, boom. And he basically said, oh wow, like I love all of that. And then I even got some feedback from him. It's like, oh yeah, no, like everybody that I made this announcement to, they all loved it. They felt really positive, really excited about like just the changes to come. I guess because people don't like change, that's why they don't like reorgs. So they got really excited about that. Boom. And then I ended up asking him, would there be any opportunity for me to kind of train you, or maybe train some of like your corporate leaders to become better leaders, so that you can basically perpetuate the infinite game, make work like a good, healthy atmosphere by showing people to be leaders and showing others that you care about them. And then that's how I kind of got that scheduled. And then that got postponed. And I was like, damn it. And then for me, I was also working on another prospect where I was really, really excited, because she wanted to go and invest into me, let me do coaching for her, and then let me upsell her on my leadership training workshop. And it's like, oh, cool. Like I was so excited, because I knew exactly what I was going to do, what I was going to charge her. And then literally the next day, the state of Nevada went on lockdown, and I haven't been able to like get in contact with her since. I'm just like,
yeah, so, it's actually really affected your ability to make money and do what you're doing. Where can people, do you have things online where people can see some of this instruction, like, or is that something you're going to have in the future? How can people find?
So you can go to my my Instagram account. So there's Frediculousness, or if you go to my other one, like Frederick Gonzales Official, like all spelled out, ZLES, not with the Z at the end. Like literally that channel, I put all of like my IGTV content on there, which is basically me getting in front of a camera and I talk for anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes. I talk about all these little many different things. You know, like the big 5 personality metrics, OCEAN, which stands for openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. How do you use that to be able to read people and then basically reverse engineer a story based upon their personality traits so that you can speak their language better. And just a whole treasure trove of stuff there.
Do you have any tips for people that have a problem with public speaking or have a problem with their confidence in that? Or, I mean, is there anything that you tell people that might be of some help that, while you're here on the airwaves, or like any tips or
I'm glad you asked that. So one of the things in which what other trainers or people will do that are like from the Toastmasters realm, they will basically say,
what is Toastmasters for someone that doesn't know what use it?
Oh, okay, sorry. So Toastmasters is basically a nonprofit organization that's been around for about 100 or so years, where you teach people how to speak. Toastmasters is basically the art of giving toasts, right? But instead of toasts, I mean, it could be toasts or it could just be stories, speaking in public, so on and so forth. And it's a globally recognized organization. And so people that are really afraid at first, that are starting out to become public speakers, when they go and seek advice, they'll always ask, what is the best way to get over fear, stage fright, so on and so forth? And people that respond to that, majority of the times, they will say, the best way to get over fear is to go up, practice, and like fail. And I fucking hate that because it's such a useless piece of advice, because now you're trying to tell somebody to like go straight into the fear, right? Where they have to learn how to deal with like the negative performance side of things. And sometimes you deal with like your ego that's in the back of your head. It's like, right, which doesn't let you adopt things as fast. And not only that, it's not empowering, right? So we kind of talk about how Black people, most of them are like Democrats, 99% of them, from what you said earlier, they're all Democrats, right? Versus it's more like, it's like they're all Democrats because they're taught to be victimized, right? Rather than like, how many books do you read? How many people come off of welfare, so on and so forth. But for public speaking, what I do is I literally say, be like the sun. So the sun doesn't give a fuck when you look at it for hella days and you go blind. So you be like the sun, unapologetically bright as fuck. Now, you translate that into an arena in which there's 2 types of thoughts. There's either the outside in theory or the inside out. So the outside in theory means that you have all of these eyes looking at you, and the back of your brain starts panicking. You're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then when you start panicking, your performance rate kind of goes down. But basically, outside in theory means that you are letting your environment influence you, right? The inside out theory means you influence your environment. Mm-hmm. So if you are a speaker or you're trying to become a public speaker, I say that you want to have this mindset where you are cognitively telling the audience, you are thinking and feeling exactly what you are thinking and feeling right now by design. And so now when you empower yourself to be the person that's responsible for the cognitive journey that you want to put your audience through, that's when the game becomes fun, right? So it's more like, how can I get away with this, right? Rather than let me all like, oh my God, oh my God. So like all offense on this, like you design it and kind of make a game like that.
Interesting. I think, this is something that I'm not that familiar with. Certainly, at least I know for sure in the business world, and like you said, people need this kind of tutelage and this kind of help in terms of things that they're not maybe comfortable with or whatnot, or anybody that wants to do public speaking. But like you said, it's very common that people speak to big audiences or whatnot in the business world and whatnot. Whereas in the regular world, that's not quite as common unless you're going to have a job, or if you're going to be a stand-up comic, or there's not that many situations where the average layman is speaking to large audiences. Probably the only other way is on social media, or like doing what we're doing and projecting it out there, and you're not really in front of the audience. That audience it's up to them to then want to see you after the fact. You're just putting it out there as information.
but it also kind of ties into like leadership as well, right? So
Right.
like you don't have to necessarily use this to become a better public speaker if you're not in a public speaking space. However, it's like when I try to train people, right? Again, I try to teach people how to like read people, how to kind of deliver content towards them that best resonates with them. That also goes into leadership as well. And like, unfortunately, there's so many people that have the word managers in their job title, and they're not managers, right? Like they're not managers. Should be equated to leadership, and there are people that just don't want to be leaders, and I don't understand it. And I guess it just comes back to the whole fundamental point, like the will to lead, right? So communication leads to great leadership, right? Which just makes everything better in life. And unfortunately, the world needs more leaders, and the world needs more people that are willing to put in the time to build others up.
And I think that makes sense. Actual leaders, because there's leaders in name only. Like you said, people have roles and people have titles, and they don't really do anything that's associated with that title. Sometimes it's just earning the title, and sometimes just earning the title earns you the payday. When in fact you're not leading, you're not managing, you're not really doing too much of anything. So that's fascinating. So we touched upon what you do, and we've talked about QAnon. We have about 15 minutes before. I think we've been doing this for an hour. I don't really have a total time schedule, so it's not like we have to stick to an hour on the dot. You've talked about let's talk about something topical here. You talked about how coronavirus, COVID-19, there in and of itself is kind of a problem, the nomenclature of what it's called in the media. Because they are two different things. I try to explain that to people, that they are not the same thing. One is an umbrella term, and one is a specific strain of what's going on. You've had it affect you business-wise and financially, as it has everybody. I know what my opinions are. I'll share them with everybody, but you're the guest. I'm curious. First, how has this affected you and your family? Give us something personal, perhaps, that this is, how you're dealing with this situation, as we all are. And then if you would, and if you care to, put your QAnon hat on and explain what you think is really going on here. And everybody has a different perspective on this. So tell us how it's affected you and your situation, and then what you think is really going on here.
Right, so for me personally, like what we're going through right now, it's like unprecedented. Like the only thing that I could kind of remember that could be something similar would be like the day after 9/11 or like 9/11, right? Where it's more like everything was shut down for the day, right? Not shut down for a month or then some. And like this, what we're going through right now compared to 9/11, like it's just so much more crazier. I am fortunate enough to be able to still have a 9-to-5 job where I get to work virtually. So I don't have to necessarily worry about like my financial situation compared to a lot of other people. So I'm not necessarily, and I'm very grateful and blessed to be in that situation. And I do feel for a lot of other people that are going through those struggles as well. So when I say like how these things are going to affect me, just know that like these are just my personal experiences these past 4-6 weeks or so, and I don't want your listeners or audience to feel like I'm not identifying like the troubles and hardships that other people that are going through that are in way worse situations than I'm in right now. So I do have to preface by saying that first and foremost. I think for me personally, this entire situation, it's been rough on me personally. Like this whole quarantine shelter in place forced me to be a little isolated, and I still live with my parents, because it takes like 20 fucking years to pay off student loans. So, but that's a whole nother story.
Right.
But like just kind of like living with my parents and like being here. Well, it's just the fact that I don't get to like feel free. Like I don't get to go like out to the gym, see my friends. And so these past 4 to 6 weeks have just been really, really like rough with me personally, just because I was used to waking up, going to work, and then going to the gym to go exercise, and then coming home and then work on my side business, right? And like those were differentiators, like each place had a purpose. And now kind of everything kind of merging together has been rough. And the reason why it's been rough is because there's like a specific traumas that I went through personally as a child, kind of stemming from my parents, that makes the situation not the best, right? But at the same time, it's not the worst as well. Again, like I said, this whole isolation, being away from people, feeling like I don't get to be around people has been slightly depressing. And actually, it wasn't until yesterday where I realized, oh wow, like kind of being a guest on your podcast kind of started kind of giving me a little bit of hope of like, going back to normalcy, and kind of give me a little kick in the butt where it's like, oh, like I'm feeling excited about just like being able to contribute again, right? Rather than kind of like lulling and kind of just worrying about surviving and like being in this quarantine and shelter place. So I'm really grateful that we met. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. And I don't know, maybe we'll just like kind of going through that low was kind of what I kind of needed to kind of make me realize, oh, like this is what my mission is in life. And so when I lost vision of that, it's like kind of drudging along, and this opportunity kind of just serves as a great reminder of this is what I was born and meant to do. So again, I'm like really, really grateful and thankful for that. And so that's how this whole shelter in place like affected me personally. Now, when it comes to this whole coronavirus, COVID-19, like lockdown thing, there's, I think it's being blown way out of proportion, right? And it's being blown way out of proportion because more people died from SARS or whatever occurred 10 years ago, and they weren't pushing any vaccines back then, right? And this is just U.S. Americans, right? 2, more people died from the flu than this. 3, if you are like 45 years or younger, right, like your like the death rate is like 0.2%.
Right. Not 2%, point.
No, 0.2.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And I just remember that initially because I remember telling all this to everybody within my Toastmasters group before we went on like the whole like quarantine and shelter in place. And then just most importantly too, like I'm even at the point where if I were to get it, it's like, hey, look, like hydroxychloroquine and like either a Z-Pak, azithromycin, zinc, vitamin C, all those things, are kind of designed to help your symptoms go away. And I'm like, cool, I'll take that. But don't ever take the vaccine because A, you can't sue vaccine companies. B, if you know who's trying to push vaccines, but if you know who's trying to push vaccines, which is Bill Gates, like, did you know he don't even give his own kids vaccines? So,
right. Steve Jobs never let his kids play with iPads. Did you ever notice? Did you ever hear that?
Yeah, no, definitely. So
vaccines. If you don't mind me interjecting, I agree with what you're saying. There's actually a secret vaccine court that handles vaccine cases that are tried. So imagine that we actually have a secret vaccination court in the United States because there's so many cases. I think they've determined that at least 75% of vaccines are made in China. So that's a little interesting. If you've noticed, vaccines are not advertised on TV. We don't know what is in them. You never ask what is in them. So when you are given a vaccine in any medical facility, to the point where vaccines are now given in fucking Publix and CVS, can you imagine that you have places now that sell magazines and milk and chocolate bars where you can get inoculated for about 10 different things? That's how much they are pushing it on you to tell you that it's for your health. I never got a flu shot. I'm not a total anti-vaxxer. I guess maybe I am. I just don't believe in the theory of them. I also know that I was born in 1975 when you got maybe 4 vaccines, and now we're up to 24. So something's wrong here. You are literally injecting people like they're animals. I don't understand the theory of, well, we'll give it to you in a lower dose so you have it, so therefore you have a better chance of dealing with beating it. Here's an idea. Have a strong immune system. Here's an idea. Try to be cognitive of germs. Before coronavirus, I tell people there's a few things. First of all, I never get sick. I'm not the healthiest person in the world, but I never get sick and I never get the flu. When I do, I beat it in 2 days. I'm very bad when I have it. I'm a baby. I fucking hate having it, but I will tell you, there are certain things that we can all do to eliminate those situations. Number one, when you go into public places, don't open the door with your entire hand. Don't grab it with this whole hand and open. I use my pinky every time. I'm strong enough to do it. So are you. Use your pinky so you don't put your whole hand on that fucking knob or on that handle. Why would you expose all of this when you can do it on that? That's number one. And this is without going completely overboard with gloves or this and that. I'm not a total germaphobe. You need to have these things go so you can test your immune system in the first place anyways, so that it is stronger. You know how weightlifters and people get strong? You got to lift weights. That's the whole point. So your immune system needs to fight. It needs to do its thing. Secondly, when I exit establishments, I don't push on the thing with my hands. I use my forearm, okay? Right. So that's one way. When you're doing gas, put something on your hand when you're using the gas. When you're at Wawa or anywhere where there's a touch screen, okay, I'm ordering my food now, get a napkin, put it in between the screen and your hand, and then you're not touching that screen. They found out that these touch screens are dirtier than toilets in public places, okay? So there's little ways to avoid it. And then there's the main thing people don't understand. Okay, you have what are called orifices on your body. Orifice, right? Orifice, your booty hole, your pee-pee hole, pretty much it. Anywhere that you can enter the bloodstream of the body is an orifice. That is how germs and disease get into your system. And then cuts. Those are the ones that are there. That's the variable. So if you have open wounds or cuts or whatever, that's the variable. But the ones that are on you 24/7 are all of those. If you do not touch them all the time with your dirty hands or don't rub your eyes. You want to rub your eye? Do it with this part of your arm. Rub your eye with your wrist. You know what I mean? So there are ways that you can do certain things. Don't put your hands in your mouth. There's never a reason to put your hand in your mouth. There's really never a reason to put your fingers up your nose. So there are little things that you can do. The eyes being the common one. We never really mess with our ears. There are many ways to not get sick. These are simple. And I can tell you, if you practice those things alone, you yourself won't get sick nearly as often. Handling money. You know what I mean? There's certain things, don't handle money. Wash your hands immediately after. So there's certain things. Going to Corona, I agree with everything you said. I think there's some questions that we need answered. That's very upsetting. I have a lot of strong opinions on this. I've done I did a podcast, Ruthless Politics. I do another podcast that I told you to check out with a buddy of mine, and he's a big liberal and whatnot. And we did a coronavirus special. And one of the things that I'm pressed by is we just don't have an answer of how this started. Again, we know so much useless information definitively. And we cannot, whether it's the journalists, the government, the World Health Organization, we do not have an answer on where this came from. So we had the bat theory, we have the bioweapon theory. China and Iran then said that we did it, that it's our bioweapon that we brought to the military Olympic Games that were held in China. So Iran and China are kind of in cahoots with their own. This came out when coronavirus first started. So there was a theory of thought that this is a bioweapon from us. And then there's a theory. All right, so China did this in a Wuhan laboratory or not. How about that we don't know this fucking answer? How about we should?
So I would just say to go to Google and look at who owns the patent for the coronavirus. And if you do that, you'll find that the company that owns the patent for the coronavirus, which I believe was filed back in like 2015 or so, is this group called the Purebright Group or the Purebright Company. And like on the board of directors is Bill and Melinda Gates. And so when they try to push you vaccines, it's like, oh, let's create a problem so that we can sell you the solution. I just think that it's funny.
That's actually a term called vertical integration. People can look that up. It's a business term, and that is literally creating the problem to sell you the solution.
Yeah. However, though, if I could take a couple steps back, because I kind of wanted to get on to what you were adding with how to prevent yourself, how you don't get sick, right, so on and so forth. I kind of wanted to kind of just give you this tidbit as well as share it with your audience. So,
Sure.
Back in the day before commercially accepted energy, right? So like Thomas Edison, before like energy was able to be distributed globally, what people would do would be that they would like chop down their wood, and then they would use the wood to create their fire. And then when the wood kind of burns into ashes, they take their wood ash and they either put that in their food, or they would kind of mix it into their water, or they would replant their wood ash back into the soil. And the reason why they did that, right, is because you get a lot of your vitamins and minerals from plants, right, or even the trees. And when it burns, it doesn't go away; it just transfers from one form to another. And then so that's how people were like allowed to like stay healthy most of the time, because they were getting all their vitamins and then their minerals. And then since the advent of commercially accepted energy, people stopped eating wood ash. And then so now, because they stopped eating wood ash, their bodies aren't getting all the vitamins and all the minerals that they need. Now, vitamins and minerals is essential because it powers your body it powers your innards to do exactly what it was designed to do. Right? When doctors tell you, oh, you don't need supplements, oh, you don't need vitamins and minerals, like if you take too much of them, you'll just come out with really, really like yellow piss. It's more like, well, your body takes what it needs and then it kind of just disposes what it doesn't need. And so now, by definition, if you are not supplementing with what you need, with what your bodies need to do what they were designed to do, then by definition, we're all starving. And then that's another cause that leads to sickness and leads to inflammation as well.
And you actually make a good point. People think vitamins and supplements are kind of hokey, or it's another of these scams or whatever. No, there's some real scams out there. This is not a scam. You're absolutely right. So I wasn't familiar with that wood ash theory. So that's interesting. I'm going to look that up. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. So there's this really great page on Instagram called Wallach Warriors, WALLACH Warriors. And so I think the person that runs it is a fan of this guy named Dr. Joel Wallach. And Dr. Joel Wallach is basically, he's this person that has done either 10 or 30,000 autopsies throughout like multiple different species, not just like people, but like different animals, so on and so forth, right? And he's sued the FDA 9 times, and he's won all 9 times, right? Because because of just kind of like misdirection, or like FDA saying that zinc isn't good for your body for like when you're a mother and you're kind of carrying, right? And that kind of led to like birth defects, so on and so forth. So just really, really interesting page where you kind of learn just a lot about vitamin and mineral supplementation, and how that you would think that, oh, just because you eat organic food, right? What people don't know is that if the soil at any point in time has ever been treated with chemicals, then then even though the batch of food that you're eating right now wasn't treated with chemicals, there's still chemical sediments into the soil that transfers into your food. And then so you may be thinking that you're eating organic food, but you're really not.
Yeah, thanks,
so
Roundup.
Just kind of,
thank you, Monsanto.
Anyway, so just wanted to
but to exacerbate your point too, I don't understand. Again, sometimes things are common sense and logic. The average American, speaking, for where we are, is not getting their vitamins and nutrients from their food, whether it's because they eat fast food, or they're not eating 3 meals a day, or whatever the typical person's diet is. You are not getting what you need, like you said, to actually run your body well with the things you need, whether it's magnesium, whether it's zinc, whether it's vitamin D. I think it's a vitamin D from the sun. I think, you need vitamins and supplements. This is not hokey. This isn't bullshit. You're not getting it from the food. The only way to get it into your body is to ingest it. If you're not doing that through food and nutrition, you got to do it some other way. That's why they put it in a pill. Same thing with medicine. Why do we bow to medicine so much? Because it makes us feel better. Or all these pills, everyone's on opioids and the drug problem. So we'll bow to that. But vitamins, and you'll have doctors and whatnot. Another reason why it's hard to listen to those folks and believe anything they say is the food pyramid. Something we've been lied to for years and years and years is this fucking food pyramid. A complete lie, a complete misinformation of of health and of what you're supposed to eat with all the breads and grain, 12 servings of bread in a day. That makes absolutely no sense. So the food pyramid's a lie. And then the other lie that came about is if you read about what Dr. Atkins went through with this whole Atkins diet, and now there's every keto and paleo and all this, they're all chips off the block of the main guy who put his life on the line because he went against all these other doctors and talked about how it's all about the carbs, it's all about the sugar, when in fact they never pitched that. All the doctors, everybody was in cahoots of saying it's about the fat, it's about the fat, it's about the fat. Then they never really differentiated between saturated and unsaturated fats, whereas, well, it's not really about the fat. Unsaturated fats are fine, you know, things like peanut oils and things like that, whatever. It's the saturated fat in the oil and the frying, anything that's deep fried is the problem. But so Atkins was like, the whole time, the American, all the doctors and all the health professionals, really going back to the 50s, I think then was when Atkins really kind of introduced this, and they slammed him for it. And now we've come to see he was right all along. It is not about the fats. People aren't fat because of fats. People are fat or overweight or obese or whatever's going on because of carbohydrates and what turns to sugar, especially when you're inactive. They talk about how Olympic athletes will eat this tremendous bowl of pasta for their carbohydrates because they're going to then go run and swim afterwards. It's the gasoline that you put in your body. But if you eat that tremendous bowl of pasta and then go sit down and watch Tiger King, well, then it didn't do what it was supposed to do. But it's the same food. You know what I mean? Same gasoline going in your body. But now you just sat and it just metabolized itself into sugar, which is what carbohydrates do. Anybody, challenge yourself. Look on the back of any of your products, and you will see that the carb count is always equal to the sugar count if there's sugar in it, and it's always a little bit higher because sugar makes up most of it. A good example of this is like a can of soda. So it may have a can of Coke may have 40 carbs in it, 38 of which are from sugar.
Yeah. So kind of expand on that just slightly, because I could talk for another 15 minutes about this, but it's just like you kind of just need to know like what your body needs. So everybody has like a different count of what they need. Like you kind of need to know like what your body type is first, and based on what your body type is, then you can kind of go figure out like how much like carbs, proteins, and fats you need. And then now this kind of gets into like doing like weighing out your food and stuff like that. And this is where people are like, oh, never mind, that's way too difficult. And again, when people say, oh, never mind, that's where like things kind of start. Like that's where bad things happen. Like when you say, oh, never mind, I'll disregard it. Like that's where just bad things start happening in life because you are not taking accountability for what you are actually doing. So if you know how to either like eat healthy, but like, you know, like say for example, like not all carbs are bad. For example, like fruit, even though that has sugar, but it has glucose. It's not fructose, it's not sucrose, it's glucose. And then it also has fiber in it too. So like those carbs are good.
Natural sugar.
Yes, right. Like proteins, fats, right, and then kind of just knowing like which fats to eat, right? So you like, you know, olive oils, avocado, peanuts, so on and so forth, and you just need a specific amount of each, right? So it's not necessarily what the food pyramid is. It's just kind of more like here's your profile. You need like X amount of carbs, X amount of carbs, X amount of proteins, and then X amount of fats, like all in a day. And then that's just kind of more like, okay, well, now that I know what I kind of have to hit, then it's more like, okay, cool. Well, let me just go kind of portion everything out. And then that's basically it. Or if you don't care, then that's fine. You don't necessarily need to care. Just be more health conscious and don't complain about being sick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And everybody has their different things. Yeah, there's merits to, you know, being completely vegan. There's merits to being, you know, vegetarian. There's merits to all different sorts of diets that maybe don't follow the norm. But if we're going with the generalized public and how they tend to eat, you know, the first mistake, unfortunately, and I'm not a super skinny guy. I've made these mistakes in my life, whatever. But when you eat for pleasure as opposed to eating for sustenance, there's the first problem. Okay, and that's a common thing that we all have, and part of why that's a problem in America is because we have so many choices of so much manufactured bad food and fast food. Fast food is an American invention that wound up, you know, all over the world, but started here. When these are the things that you prefer, and the manufactured food, anything from Little Debbie's or Drake's, all those little cakes and bullshit, all the potato chips, anything that is kind of frankenfood in a way that's not real food. This is where people run into their problems, and that's because they're eating for pleasure. They're not eating for sustenance. And so that's another thing that it would be beneficial for people to change in their lives. If you're talking about health, if you're just talking about enjoying your life, eating what you want and doing what you want, then like you said, so be it. Then you'll deal with those health risks. You'll deal with that sickness or whatever, or not. Maybe you're lucky. There's always that theory. The guy smoked cigarettes and drank booze for 80 years and nothing ever happened. And you're right. God bless that. It does go that way too for some people. Going back to coronavirus and COVID, I think one of the things that bothers me also about it is the overblowing of the numbers, like you said. I try and tell everybody that will listen to me that the death rate for this, like you said, besides that the flu is worse and we didn't do anything about that. If we took the TV set where all this news is being thrown at us or on the internet, and they keep doing the running count every day of the amount of cases and the amount of deaths, we get these two numbers, cases and deaths. And we have this running tally we're looking at every day. I'm looking at it, whatnot. If we did that with car accidents, we would shit ourselves. You know how many people would be afraid to get in the car? Do you know how many people would be afraid to drive if that number was bombarded in their face every time? And that's what we should do. You want to do an interesting sociological project? Have every news organization every day list the amount of car accidents in every state and the amount of deaths by car accident in every state every day. And watch how that erodes how people feel about driving and how many people would no longer maybe get on the road. And if you've ever met anybody, especially if they're older, you'll hear people say, oh, I never get on the highway. No, I live close to I-95. Oh, I never take I-95. There are people, you may have met them yourself and anybody watching, there are people that are afraid to drive on the highway. They don't like the high speeds. They're intimidated, whatnot. Well, why do you think that is? Because there's a fear of dying. There's a fear there, whatever. And whatever perpetuated that fear for them, they have it. So can you imagine the same way we're seeing with COVID, that if we put this running total every day of car accidents and deaths, I wonder how that would really make people feel.
Yeah, so again, it goes back to like my whole thing about how do I tell people to get out of the fear of public speaking. Again, it just becomes you have to learn how to just empower yourself first, right? So, well, if you know to empower yourself, now you know what the risks are, and like those are acceptable risks for you. Obviously, then those are like your decisions. But like being conditioned to fear things, again, it's more like you are literally letting other people dictate your behavior and your worldview about things, rather than kind of going out and like finding those answers on your own. So that's just kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it makes sense. Fear is a ploy that's always been used by all governments, by all power structures to control people. You will always if you can instill fear, you can control. I use an anecdote, and I use this in the previous, when we did our Corona special. This is a little bit before your time, but I think you'll be familiar with it. There's a movie called Jaws. Remember Jaws?
Wow.
Okay. So Jaws took place somewhere in New York. I can't remember what city or whatnot. It's not important. But Jaws scared people so much. Okay, this was a movie. This was a mechanical shark. It looked real. And that's scary. That's scary, obviously. And Jaws, this was an example of another sociological project. And it lets us know really what we're about, at least the sheeple or the 95%. I like to think that I'm in that 5% that goes the other way. But Jaws scared the public in New York and around the country so much that beaches saw an incredible decline in beachgoers after Jaws came out. And not only did the beachgoers not go to the beach, but it fucked up all the tourism in that area and tourism in other places that had beaches, and affected all the businesses that thrive off of that tourism. Let that sink in for a second of what fear can do. Manufactured fear from a movie. The same man who made Jaws made E.T.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, but
Yeah.
it's a great example. I always cite the Jaws example of how people are fucking nuts,
Yeah.
not well thought out, easily led, and not really logical or pragmatic.
Yeah.
And it's kind of
No,
scary.
no. I get it. Like I remember like when I was like 7, 8 years old or so, I saw a quick commercial for arachnophobia, and I just remember like one of the characters kind of pulling back the curtain. There's like a fuck ton of spiders right there, and ever
Right.
since that, right, like literally 5 seconds, I saw that, and like I just had this fear of spiders. That's
Of
like,
course.
yeah. So I get it. Like,
Yeah, and that was adopted by Monsanto and the anti-spider lobby. You know, made sure that that movie got out because we can't look at those spiders in any way of redeeming value for
yeah,
spiders. Yeah. Listen, that movie was fake as shit, obviously, but boy, it looked real, and they did
yeah,
use real spiders in a lot of those scenes or whatever. But yeah, of course, there would be a definite fear. It didn't quite take on the Jaws levels of fear, but yes, I could see how that could do that to anybody.
yeah,
Um, it's it's I love sociological experiments. I
mm,
love setting people up and seeing the results of how that's going to be, especially when it comes to dumb shit and things like that. So Jaws is just a very interesting example of how fear, like this COVID-19, um, can really grip people and maybe not think clearly. And that's one of the things that happens with fear sometimes. That's even like if someone's breaking into your home, you know, and maybe you have a firearm, whatever, you know, what are you going to do? This is the moment now. Like, how do you handle the fear? You know, there's instincts come into play and gut reactions on it. There's not a lot of time to think when fear comes in. And that's all animals. They even talk about the scent of fear. You know what I mean? That people and animals actually give off a scent when they're afraid. So it's a very powerful, strong thing. And it's obviously easily manipulated.
yo,
Um,
definitely.
we've done a little over an hour here. What would you like to say in closing? And you know, if there's anything you want to share, if there's anything that you want to promote, you know, this would be the time.
So best thing I would like kind of just tell for your audience is best investment you can ever do and invest into is yourself, right? And so like read some books or like learn from other people. If you don't like reading, that's fine. Then you can get like read Spark Notes, right? Or get like Audible, right? So constantly be about that growth game. Constantly just like lift yourself up so that you can lift others up. Because if you're in the plane and that whole oxygen mask thing kind of comes out, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can put it on other people. So
It
I
is
would do that.
required. Yes.
Yeah, that, and then if you ever need some advice on how to structure any of your content or speech, whatnot, so that you can make your peers say, "Oh wow." Feel free to hit me
Right.
up on Instagram. You can either hit me on Ridiculousness or my other Instagram account on Frederick Gonzales Official. I would actually make you go to that one if you just want to learn a lot about just speaking, people game, communicating a little bit about psychology, and feel free to add me on Instagram because I'm always here. And if
Absolutely.
you need
Do you
support,
have
want to talk about ideas, feel free to hit me up.
do you have a YouTube channel with any of this stuff on it or no?
So I don't yet.
Are you contemplating that?
Yeah. So like that's kind of like the next thing that I'm kind of working on doing. I'm trying to just figure out how I can take all my content, transfer it over to YouTube, and then, well, before I transfer it to YouTube, how do I just put captions in my content and then put it there? So that's like in the works as well. So
Yeah, there's a lot of work involved in this, folks. I mean, anyone who's a content creator, people, you got to understand. I learned this the hard way. I was working 2 different businesses, and I had 2 different podcasts, and boy, there's a lot of work involved. So when people take care of content creators, whether it's through tribute or subscribing or whatnot, you're really helping people. This is a job. It is definitely people have to put in work in order to do this. And so yeah, definitely check out. It is Frediculousness on Instagram, and it's pretty much like you'd figure. It's Frediculousness, like ridiculousness with the name Fred in front of it.
yeah.
I appreciate your time, Mr. Gonzales. I hope to talk to you again. We can do this again anytime. You're listening to the Mr. Josh Podcast. We appreciate anybody that's watching, anybody that's going to chime in. We definitely appreciate it. I'm building an audience. I'm pretty new to this, and so it's a growing endeavor for me as well. And I think I'm going to do my best to take up some of the information that that Eric gave us in terms of public speaking and all that, because that's kind of a soft spot for me as well. I'm not as comfortable with some of that, as hard as that may seem to believe. But again, I appreciate your time, and we'll definitely talk again, go over some other subjects as things loosen up, and hopefully we have some positive in the next couple of weeks as things begin to open up. Hopefully that there's some more positivity in terms of for you, for your family, for your work, and for everybody.
Definitely. I look forward to it, Josh.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Again, yes, thank you. Guys, it's the Mr. Josh Podcast. We're going to sign off. I'm on YouTube. You can look for it. Everything is the Mr. Josh, all in one, podcast in the other. On Instagram, I'm Mr. Josh W. And on Twitter, Mr. Josh W. So there's, it's pretty easy to find if you just search that way. Again, we're going to sign off. I am, again, saying thank you to my guest, Eric Gonzales, also known as Fredrickiousness. Thank you all for watching, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks again.
All right. Take care.